I think the number one thing is important in leadership in a crisis is tell the truth. Always tell the truth.
Part of the whole thing with leadership, if you can't be a leader if there's no one following you. And that is based on trust, getting fairly accurate information, sometimes not the most perfect information, but the information you have at hand.
I mean, the reason things were uncertain is just because the world was uncertain. We had no idea what the next hour was going to bring. And so even as leaders, we didn't know what was going on all the time. So how could we communicate best to everybody else?
Open, honest, candid communication so that when you communicate thoughtfully and effectively, then people understand what the situation is and what the crisis is.
And as authentically as I could, acknowledging that we didn't have all the answers. And that doesn't always make people feel great when their leaders, don't always have the answers, but it's honest. And I think it also allowed people to acknowledge that we were all doing our best.
And the thing I found really helpful was just to communicate that uncertainty. Say, we don't know what the next week is going to bring, but our goal is to do X, Y, and Z and do it as safely as we can. I think it might look something like this.
To be able to show people a pathway forward. If you tell the truth, you admit there's a big problem, you must then say there's a way forward. So the leadership means doing that. It doesn't mean you have to know all the way through the end, and there can be uncertainties. The pathway forward can be like driving at home in the dark. You drive, where your house is, you can turn on your headlights, you can see a little ways ahead, but you can't see all the way to the end. If you can see a little way ahead, you can get to the end.
We're going to be very transparent and honest with people. And what I tell you today is based on what I know today. What I tell you tomorrow may be entirely different. And that's not because I'm lying to you today or I'm trying to fool you tomorrow. It's that these are dynamic situations and the facts are going to change. What we know is going to change. How we respond to those facts and the environment around us is going to change. So part of that early message, I think, is preparing people for why messages might change, why decisions might change, why strategy might change. And that's because you just don't have all the information.
Acknowledging the uncertainty in that. So, being very transparent that everything we do is, our best guess based on what we know at the moment, right? And what we know at the moment was rapidly changing. And so being very transparent about, we're not 100% certain for sure. While you might think that makes people doubt you, I think gives people more trust that you're not just fixed in a rigid mindset.
Subscribe to this, relentless transparency kind of ethos. And, there isn't much, I don't have a poker face. You can read my face all the time. If I know something, I'm willing to share it.
I tried to be throughout all of this as transparent and free with information as I could be. And so I will recognize that when there were struggles, especially early on, I think when people don't have a lot of information, your minds run and people gossip and everything feels maybe a lot worse than it is in that immediate moment. And so as I had information, I really tried to pass it along in real time.
Don't exaggerate the risk. Don't minimize it. And when you're explaining the truth, speak in English, not in medical jargon or probability curves or anything like that. Explain it in plain English.
Having good information and being able to show people that information transparently so that they can see what you're trying to tell them, right? And so, that's some things are as simple as, publicly sharing our COVID census, right? And, we were one of the first health systems to do that, both internally and externally, right? So people can see, the number goes up every 3 days, it doubles, right? Like for a long time, that was what was happening.
I talked to my, people that work with me, that work for me, other chairs, mentors, and just kind of try to get a sense for what people needed to hear from me, like at what interval, what tone was right, what frequency was right.
You can never communicate too much. It's been said, and it's very, very true.
I started sending a daily email to our leaders, and then I realized, oh, this is not going to work. I started sending it to all our faculty every day. And so what I would include in that email is how many hospitalized patients we had, as we were ramping up, and some of the key things that were going on. We were talking about a field hospital. We activated the RICU. We were using some of the ICUs. We had so many people on the floor. We totally restructured our GME program to stretch the number of medical teams because we went from covering 300 beds to 500 beds in the hospital. And what I decided to do is put that in a daily announcement, 7 days a week for some of the updates, plus keep up with the statistics. So in the statistics, I put up how many COVID patients we had in the state of Michigan, how many COVID patients we had in the hospital, how we were discharging, who was discharged home, how many deaths did we have, what was our occupancy, and then some key things that were going on in the department. And the funny thing is, I thought it was like, okay, no one's going to read these emails. But I was surprised. I got so many emails. Most of them were, I feel connected because I didn't know all this stuff, and you're passing on the information.
The email is a great way to summarize it, to remind people of things that they've already heard, put it in black and white. But
if I have a specific question that I can't get through in an email, I'm just going to get on the phone and talk to you for 2 minutes. That way we're seeing each other straight.
I personally think it has to be in person because everybody is just overwhelmed with electronic communication, and it's really hard to tell what email needs to be read and what email needs to be answered.
Sort of relentless in person as much as we can Zoom and that sort of thing now.
I also think communication can't be in a simple one-way format. Specifically, I think email is the worst way to communicate. So when we were in the RICU, I don't know if you guys and Valerie or Chris, but I was texting people a lot at all hours of the day and night. I actually was texting our bed control people the first few nights when this whole thing started with our first few patients, because we were trying to find which beds people should go to in the hospital, negative pressure rooms, and there was this layer of negative pressure, regular negative pressure 0.06, which I didn't know. And so every room every day would have a pressure test, and you wouldn't know if it was the right room or the wrong room. And so rather than paging people, I became very comfortable texting people.
You text and you call them constantly, and you do actually get on the phone with them. You do over communicate, but people are only listed. They only really retain about 30% of what you're telling them at any given time. And I don't care if it's in an email or verbally, but it's just, it's just so much information coming at people. You can't retain it. So it's a constant reminder, constant communication.
As a leader, if people don't know what your principles are, what your purpose is in life, what your passions are, if you don't share those, then they're not going to follow you just because you say this is a great idea.
Not only telling people how and when and what we're going to do. I think it's really important to tell people why you're doing something and include them in that conversation.
I think as we were coming up with our plan for which doctors were going to do what, where we're going to put patients, we struggled a lot with how we deploy faculty who were coming in to fill in gaps. Do we put them on the front lines by themselves taking care of COVID patients? Do we, and there are pluses and minuses to all these different decisions. If we did it that way, it was felt to be equitable. But yet you put some people in situations they were perhaps more uncomfortable with. Is that really the best care for those patients? If you did it a different way and basically really doubled down on the backs of providers who had been doing this, well, it unfairly disadvantages them in terms of their schedules, their vacation time. They feel the brunt of it is falling on their shoulders, but it's better for patient care. And we took that latter approach, which was not an easy decision to make, but I think it was the right one. It kept, some people who we had to bring in and deliver care that they were not comfortable doing. We kept them with the lower risk patients, kept them a little bit more in their comfort zone, which I think was better for them, better for patient care. And while we did burden our hospitalists, for example, our pulmonary critical care faculty, there was a very intense and concerted effort to acknowledge that. to communicate. I know this feels unfair. The burden falls on you, but we need you. Your community needs you. Your department needs you.
And I'd actually follow up with people. If there was a bad outcome, I'd check and see how they were doing with that, because it was very difficult, especially early on when we had, patients dying by themselves. That's hard on the providers as well. So following up with, my hospitalist who'd lost patients, and also circling back if I found out that something good had happened to someone, like that one of their patients had been discharged from the hospital. I'd let them know about that, because we all need little victories. So anything you can do to kind of keep up morale during the time is also really important.
So one of the very first communication things that I do at the beginning of any meeting is a check-in. And so I love alliteration. So if I speak in alliteration, don't laugh at me. But I want to know, how are you doing? And when I say are, I'm thinking of the letter R. And so I want to know, do you want to rave about something? Do you want to reflect? Do you want the group to relax? Do you want to rant about something? One time, a faculty member wanted to read a poem. Do you want to just respirate or breathe? Do you want to respect something or reflect something? And what I realized at those times is that it really allows you as a leader, especially when we're not here, we can't get, even with Zoom, I can't get your feelings. I can't tell if you're multitasking or bored. I can't tell if you're excited or you're listening to rock music in the background. But if I allow people to express what's going on to themselves, it allows for a temperature for everyone in the room.
And sometimes that means you have to be visible and see and be in touch with what people are wrestling with, so that they can, no matter how challenging or bad things may be, for people to know that somebody's in the foxhole with them, or somebody maybe they might miss something or overlook something or underweight, overweight something. But at least if there's a bit of a person there that's kind of sharing the journey with them, I think it's absolutely crucial.
How important it is as a leader to be in the trenches doing the work with the people that you're leading. So, and I will again say that the role model for that was Vineet. I said I was the first person to take care of a patient with COVID. He was the second, and he worked a night shift to do it, and as a division chief, he does not need to work nights. If he negotiated away every single night ever, he wouldn't need to take care of any COVID patients. He could assign that to someone else. He could step back from all of that and make someone else do that work. But that's not who he is, and that's not how he would ever do it.
I spend an hour every morning when I'm in the hospital, literally walking all the floors, just hands in my pocket. Not even, I'll pop in and say, hi, hello, how's it going, ask a few questions. But I have this sense of obligation that if I don't walk and I don't see it, I'm not going to know it.
And so when I was in the RICU, even if I wasn't on service, I was in the room. I actually they joked and made fun of me as the little command center, which was basically my laptop in the team room. And I would sit there, even when I wasn't taking care of patients, so that every time there was an issue that came up, instead of the doctors having to troubleshoot, I could say, I'll take care of that. Let me go coordinate it with the nursing or staff, or figure out why that device isn't working, or how to fix that order set. The millions of problems that come up when you're starting a new unit, I didn't want my doctors to have to troubleshoot that. I wanted to be there and do that. And so them seeing me there every day was really helpful. And honestly, Vineet walked through 40 times a day too. So he was on the ground there. Everyone knew that no matter how many hours they were working, he was working more. And I think I kind of felt the same way, that no matter if my doctors were working 12-hour days, I was going to be working 12-hour days, and we were going to figure it out together. And so actually being present helps you problem solve, and it also helps morale, because they feel like you're in it with them.